I want to cover something else because it's going to be very important for you and I as an opportunity to validate a message. And I want us to shed some baggage that we tend to carry with ourselves about this strange dimension called time. You and I tend to presume that time is linear and absolute. We assume that an hour yesterday is like an hour a year from now, and that there's really no discernible difference. We also think of time as linear, and when we were in school, the teacher would draw a line on the blackboard, and it would start, the left end would be the beginning of something, the birth of a person, the founding of a nation, or some such thing, and the right end of the line might be the death of that person, or the termination of that empire, what have you. We've made timelines. How many of you have made timelines in school? Well, how many of you went to school? Okay, that's right. Well, because of this idea, when we encounter the concept of eternity, we jump to the model in our minds that eternity is sort of like a line that starts at infinity on the left and that goes to infinity on the right. That's a natural extrapolation from our own experience. Therefore, when we encounter something like God, we think of someone who has lots of time. And that turns out to be bad physics. Because God is not, see, time, we've learned from Einstein, is a physical property. And let's explore that a little bit, because that's important. We exist in more than 3 dimensions, and time itself is a physical property. Time, we know, varies with mass, acceleration, and gravity, just to name a few. And let me demonstrate that for you. If I had an atomic clock here on the platform and I raised it 1 meter, it would speed up by 1 part in 10 to the 16th. Not enough to adjust our personal schedules, obviously, but the point is predictable and measurable. If I raise it 100 meters, it would speed up by 1 part in 10 to the 14th. Now, the United States Naval Observatory actually conducted an experiment in 1971. Put an atomic clock on an airplane, went around the world eastward. Compared to an atomic clock at rest at the observatory, it lost 0.06 microseconds. They put one on an atomic clock going westward around the world, and it gained 0.27 microseconds. Not a lot, but the point is, by accounting for all the variables, that's exactly what Einstein's theory would predict, and that's exactly what they experienced. The point is, time is a physical dimension. Let me give you another example. If you read a physics textbook in this area, you'll almost always encounter a hypothetical example of the 2 astronauts. And we imagine 2 astronauts born at the same instant, and we're going to send one of them to the nearest star, which happens to be Alpha Centauri, about 4.5 light years away. If you apply the Lorentz transformations here, it turns out, and we're going to send this guy, the guy's traveling, to Alpha Centauri at half the speed of light, and then bring him back. Alpha Centauri being 4.5 light years away, going at half the speed, it'd take him 9 years to get there, 9 years to get back. But when he gets back, he will discover that he's not 2 years and 9 months younger than his twin brother. If that doesn't bother you, you weren't listening. Okay? Let me dramatize it a little further. Let me imagine that it were possible to send him at 99.99% of the speed of light. It would take him 9 years to make the round trip. But during that time, the Earth will have aged 636 years. That should bother you. Now, don't quarrel with the arithmetic. The point is that time is a physical property. And that has some profound implications for you and I. Albert Einstein summed it up very nicely. He said, people like us who believe in physics know that the distinction between the past, the present, and the future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Now, we happen to have in our possession an extraterrestrial message that's been authenticated. And there are 2 critical discoveries that changed my life. My background is engineering, and I've spent most of a 30-year career as a high technology executive. The thing that impressed me most during my life is the discovery that the Bible, first of all, is an integrated message. Even though it's written in 66 separate books by 40 different guys who didn't even know each other over a period of almost 2,000 years. It's an integrated message. I'm going to demonstrate that to you in a few moments. So the first point is that there's 2 discoveries, that it's an integrated message, The second thing we discover is that it has its origin from outside the dimensionality of time itself. And this is going to be very, very relevant because it describes the kinds of experiences that we see coming upon the planet Earth in some very unique ways. And so that's our goal today, to explore that a little bit. Now, God, let me ask a question. Is God subject to gravity? I don't think so. So God is not somebody who has lots of time. God is somebody who's outside the dimensionality of time altogether. And that's what Isaiah means when he says, "Thus saith the high and lofty one that inhabiteth eternity." Now, if he has the technology to create us in the first place, does he have the technology to get a message to us? Of course. The problem is, how does he authenticate his message? How does he let us know that the message we possess is really from him and not some kind of contrivance or some kind of fraud? How many of you here in the audience believe that this is the Word of God? Wonderful. That's the politically correct response in this community. Outside, maybe not so, but here. Okay. The question you need to ask yourself desperately is, how do you know? Because if we're correct, before this day is over, you're going to discover that we are being plunged into the greatest cosmic deception that will ever come upon the planet Earth. The lie. The New Testament talks about it. I don't think that's an ism. Mark Eastman and I both believe it's a very tangible, specific thing that we're going to try to cover. And you, as a member of the Christian community, are going to be, in the coming months, coming years, challenged in a way that will require you to really know why you believe this is the Word of God.